Uwezo Fund, and Civil Service Housing Scheme Fund. Thank you, Mr. Speaker.
Thank you, Honorable Fatuma. Next order.
Order number 6, notices of motion.
Under this order, Honorable Fatuma, give notice of motion.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Notice of motion. Chairperson, Special Funds Accounts Committee. Consideration of the report of the Auditor General.
Order, Honorable Fatuma, I say, I beg to give notice of the following motion.
Thank you, sir. I beg to give notice of motion. Consideration of the report of the Auditor General on the financial statement for Women Enterprise Fund, Coffee Sherry Advance Revolving Fund, Strategic Food Reserve Trust Fund, Equalization Fund, Mechanical and Transport Fund, National Research Fund, Youth Enterprise Development Fund, Uwezo Fund, Civil Servants Housing Scheme Fund. Honorable Speaker, I beg to give notice of the following motion, that this House adopts the report of the Special Funds Accounts Committee on its consideration of the report of the Auditor General on the financial statement for the Women Enterprise Fund, Coffee Cherry Advance Revolving Fund, Strategic Food Reserve Trust Fund, Equalization Fund, Mechanical and Transport Fund, National Research Fund, Youth Enterprise Development Fund, Uwezo Fund, and Civil Servants Housing Scheme Fund, laid on the table of the House on Thursday, 15th June 2023. Thank you, Mr. Speaker.
Thank you, Honorable Fatuma. Clerk. Order, Clerk.
Order number 7, questions and
Clerk, hold. What Honorable Fatuma has given us notice, you expunge the first statement she made, then start in the Hansard with, I beg to give notice. Right, so that the record is proper. Thank you, Fatuma. Next.
Order number 7, questions and statements.
Honorable members, we have no questions, we have no statement. You have your Thursday statement. Majority Leader.
Thank you, Honorable Speaker. Honorable Speaker, pursuant to the provisions of Standing Order 44-2A, I rise to give the following statement on behalf of the House Business Committee, which met on Tuesday, 13th June 2023, to prioritize the business for consideration during the week. Honorable Speaker, as members are aware, this week the House concluded the general debate on the budget estimates of revenue and expenditure for the financial year 2023, 2024, and the medium term, and adopted the annual estimates with amendments in the Committee of Supply. Additionally, the House concluded the second reading of the Finance Bill 2023 after the Departmental Committee on Finance and National Planning tabled its report on the bill. I would like to commend the committee and indeed the House for the steadfast commitment and participation during this important business, which has sometimes gone late into the night. Honorable Speaker, members will note that I had previously conveyed that the Cabinet Secretaries for Labor and Social Protection and the Cabinet Secretary Lands, Public Works, Housing and Urban Development were scheduled to appear before the House on the afternoon of Wednesday, 14th June 2023, to respond to the questions in the plenary of the National Assembly. However, due to priority business before the House, this has been postponed to a date that shall be communicated. Honorable Speaker, with regard to the business for Tuesday next week, the House is expected to consider the Finance Bill 2023 at Committee of the whole House in the course of a week, and the Appropriations Bill 2023 also in the course of a week at all stages, once it is published. Debate on the following business will also continue next week. 1, report of the Departmental Committee on Environment, Forestry and Mining on the ratification of the Kigali amendments on the Montreal Protocol on the substances that deplete the ozone layer. 2, the report of the Departmental Committee on Environment, Forestry and Mining on the ratification of the Bamako Convention on the ban of the importation into Africa and the control of transboundary movement and management of hazardous waste within Africa. 3, the report on United Nations Convention Against Corruption, UNCAC, and Global Parliamentarians Against Corruption, GOPAC, Annual General Meeting, and 4, the second reading of the statutes Law Miscellaneous Amendments Bill of 2022. Finally, the House Business Committee, Honorable Speaker, will convene on Tuesday, 20th June 2023 to schedule business for the rest of the week. And I wish to lay the statement before the table of the House. Thank you, Honorable Speaker.
Thank you. Next. Yes, Junet, what is...
Mr. Speaker, in line with the statement that has been tabled by the majority leader, I think now there is clarity in the House that the finance bill is coming up for the third reading on Tuesday next week. Because, Mr. Speaker, you know, yesterday when we were debating the finance bill in the second reading, there was a lot of confusion that people didn't know, and many members are saying did not know that the question will be put, even though we have Standing Order 95 that allows anyone to stand up and ask for the mover to reply. But now with clarity and with the statement that now has been tabled by the majority leader, there is clarity that the third reading is going to happen next week on Tuesday, and members must be aware of that, especially members on our side. Now you can prepare properly. Thank you very much.
Yes, Chungwa.
Honorable Speaker, you know my good friend, the Honorable Junet, might not have heard me clearly. I said from business beginning on Tuesday, in the course of the week, next week, we will have the third reading and the appropriations bill, should it be published over the weekend. But that is not to say it could be Tuesday, and the Honorable Junet is a member of the House Business Committee, and he knows it is a House Business Committee that schedules business for the week. And I believe when we meet on Tuesday 20th, we'll be able to schedule business for next week. Two, Honorable Speaker, there should be no excuse for any member of parliament to be anywhere else other than in the National Assembly, in chamber, debating, and therefore there were no surprises yesterday. Every member of parliament who's been elected by the people of Kenya from the constituency we are elected in, we should be in the House from Tuesday to Thursday. And it's a very short 4 hours in the afternoon, another 8 or so hours on Wednesday, Thursday, another short 4 hours, and we're off to our constituency. Honorable Speaker, let me just say, in the course of next week, between Tuesday and Thursday, when the House business schedules and the order paper will be published, Honorable Speaker, by Monday night, actually. Then the House business schedules when we transact what business.
Junet, you want to pursue that?
There is clarity now, but you know, Mr. Speaker, the course of the week is a course that you have to, with your indulgence now, Mr. Speaker, and the mood of the House is that on Tuesday we have the finance bill. Can we agree tentatively here and ask the House,
Order, Honorable Junet. Order, members, order. For avoidance of any doubt and Honorable Junet's point of order, many members thought that by your vote last evening, you concluded the finance bill. You didn't. There is still the committee of the whole. The bill as you passed yesterday is the bill as published. The committee itself has proposed amendments. There are many members, I believe, who will also bring amendments to the bill. And that will be in the committee of the whole, depending on what the House Business Committee, in which Junet yourself sits, you will give direction as to whether to start on Tuesday or Wednesday or whichever day. But I believe that in the course of business, we should be able to start on Tuesday and proceed until you finish. If you want to truncate the process, you can finish on Tuesday. If you want to mount spirited competition, including but not limited to divisions, then we may be able to go on up to Thursday. But be aware that the finance bill is not done yet. Order, no more points of order. Yes, Senior Counsel.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, I need your guidance on a procedural matter, unless it escaped my attention at any one point. I'm looking at Standing Order 244C in terms of the order in which things are to be done. It suggests to me that the budget highlights and revenue-raising measures which would be presented by the Cabinet Secretary comes first under 244C1. On the same day, under 244C4, on that same day, then the Cabinet Secretary will then present a legislative proposal. It is that legislative proposal which, once presented under now Standing Order 245, constitutes and becomes the finance bill, which then is later discussed. So, Mr. Speaker, I want to understand a situation where the finance bill was already introduced, has already come to the second reading, and the budget proposals have not been made, and the proposal by the Cabinet Secretary has not been presented. What then were we discussing? It is my understanding that if we go that way, then it means we have dispensed with the presentation of the budget proposal by the Cabinet Secretary, in which case I will seek your guidance on why the business you had indicated that will be undertaking from 3 p.m. Thank you, Mr. Speaker.
Honorable Senior Counsel, the standing order you are citing was actually rendered negatory by a decision of the court that has been the creation of the process that we are undertaking. So this process is not against any law. I hear somebody saying that you participated in the court case that rendered the standing order negatory. So what we are doing is procedural, and we are not in any way flouting any standing order. It wasn't. Honorable members, I have a short communication. And Senior Counsel, we may pursue that argument later in my chamber if you so wish. And it's in relation to interruption of business, pronouncement on the budget policy highlights, and revenue-raising measures for the national government for the financial year 2023-24. Honorable members, Section 40 of the Public Finance Management Act 2012 and Standing Order 244C require the Cabinet Secretary for the National Treasury to make a public pronouncement on the budget policy highlights and revenue-raising measures for the national government each financial year. In this regard, and as communicated earlier, the Cabinet Secretary will be making this pronouncement shortly. Honorable members, I wish to recognize the dignitaries present in the galleries today. They include members of the Cabinet, led by the Prime Cabinet Secretary, the Honorable Dr. Wycliffe Musalia Mudavadi, EGH. Other guests present today include Principal Secretaries, Chairpersons and Chief Executive Officers of parastatals, senior government officials, members of the Diplomatic Corps, and the development partners. On behalf of the National Assembly and on my own behalf, I welcome all of you to the National Assembly. Honorable members, before I invite the Cabinet Secretary for the National Treasury and Economic Planning to make his pronouncement, I wish to remind the House that in accordance with the provision of Standing Order 244C3, the Cabinet Secretary shall be heard without question or clarification sought. Further, the provisions of the Parliamentary Powers and Privileges Act 2017 do apply to the Cabinet Secretary during this sitting. Not all Cabinet Secretaries present, but only the Cabinet Secretary for the Treasury and Planning. Honorable members, I now interrupt the business of the House to allow the Cabinet Secretary for the National Treasury and Economic Planning to make public pronouncement on the budget policy highlights and revenue-raising measures for the national government for the year 2023-2024 and the medium term. Cabinet Secretary for the National Treasury and Economic Planning, Professor Njuguna Ndungu, CBS, you may now proceed. The floor is yielded to you.
Mr. Speaker, it is a great honor and privilege for me to present to this august House and to the people of the Republic of Kenya the first budget of the Kenya Kwanza administration under the...
Order, members.
Okay, ada
Minister, proceed.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. It is a great honor and privilege for me to present to this august House and to the people of Kenya the first budget of the Kenya Kwanza administration under the leadership of His Excellency Dr. William Samoei Ruto, the President of the Republic of Kenya, and the Commander-in-Chief of the Defense Forces. I do this in compliance with the Standing Order number 241 of the National Assembly and Section 40 of the Public Finance Management Act of 2012 that requires the Cabinet Secretary for the National Treasury to make pronouncement of the budget policy highlights and revenue-raising measures to the national government. This being the first budget following the conclusion of the general election held in August 2022, allow me to congratulate all the honorable members who were re-elected and those who are serving for the first time in this august House. I look forward to working closely with all of you as we implement the bottom-up economic transformation agenda designed to achieve a sustained economic recovery for improved livelihoods for all Kenyans. Before I proceed, Mr. Speaker, allow me to take this opportunity to express my deep appreciation to His Excellency, the President for appointing me to the Cabinet Secretary, to the position of the Cabinet Secretary of the National Treasury and Economic Planning, and entrusting me with the honor of overseeing the management of macroeconomic policy and public financial management for this great nation. I also wish to extend my sincere gratitude to His Excellency, the President, for his wise counsel during the preparations of this budget policy highlights and revenue-raising measures that will lay a strong foundation for our socio-economic transformation. Mr. Speaker, the financial year 2023-2024 budget has been prepared against a background of a challenging external and domestic environment. In addition, the COVID-19 pandemic, Kenya has, over the past years, suffered and also a series of devastating negative and persistent shocks that include the worst drought in decades, as well as adverse spillover effects of the conflict in Eastern Europe and a tight global financial market condition. The combination of all these negative and continuing shocks are what we describe as a perfect storm that has confronted this new administration. The extreme climate change events have emerged as key drivers of food security and increased cost of living. Indeed, our people are currently confronted with increasing higher prices of basic foods, commodities, energy, and transport. This calls for urgent and decisive interventions, especially on our supply side response. Mr. Speaker, in fulfillment of the requirements under the Constitution on public participation, we accorded Kenyans an opportunity to share their views on issues that needed to be addressed in this budget. Mr. Speaker, we received from many Kenyans proposals and suggestions that have informed the priorities outlined in this budget statement. The key concerns raised by the public can broadly be clustered around 5 issues. 1, the high cost of living. 2, the high cost of unemployment. 3, and this is mostly among the youth. 3, the high tax burden. And 4, the wastage of public resources. And finally, the high public debt. Mr. Speaker, having listened carefully to the concerns from the public and taking cognizance of the socio-economic and environmental challenges facing the country, the budget policy highlights seeks to provide solutions to the said concerns as we all work towards accelerating economic recovery. Proactively, the Kenya Kwanza government has begun the journey to bring down the cost of living and improve the livelihoods, while at the same time fostering a sustainable, inclusive economic transformation. The government has taken the long-term sustainable approach of subsidizing production of goods instead of consumption to respond to the rising cost of living. In this regard, the government has instituted immediate interventions that are aimed at providing short-term solutions to the high cost of living, while at the same time building a momentum for the long-term economic vibrancy and transformation. In particular, the government has covered the following areas. First, through the e-voucher fertilizer subsidy program, availed to 6 million of 50 kilogram bags of subsidized fertilizer worth 15 billion that are retailing at a cost of 350 per bag, a reduction from the market price from 6,500 per bag, representing a subsidy of Kenya shillings 3,000 per bag. So far, the government has registered 5 million farmers nationwide and issued over 2.5 e-vouchers to registered farmers. As a result, Kenyan farmers have been able to plant at least 200,000 additional acres of food this year and used 2 million more kilograms of seeds, and that is expected to improve the agricultural yields. Second, the government has granted duty waivers for importation of key food products such as white maize, rice, yellow maize, soya beans, soya bean meal, assorted protein concentrates, and feed additives effective from 1st February to 6th February, 1st February this year to 6th August 2023. This has been done in order to bridge the food stocks deficit and will lower the cost of food prices. As a result of the drought, third, the mitigation measures and the climate adaptation programs, the government initiated a national tree planting campaign that seeks to enhance our national tree cover from 12% to 30% through a target of planting 15 billion trees by 2032. In addition, the government has initiated new dam constructions to address the drought concerns and ensure Kenya has enough harvested water to facilitate a water management strategy for irrigation and food production. Fourth, the government has invested very heavily in biotechnology research and uptake of drought-tolerant crops to promote food security, particularly in marginalized areas. In the current year, over 250 metric tons of assorted drought-tolerant seeds valued at Kenya shillings 50 million have been distributed in Embu, Meru, Makueni, Machakos, Tharaka Nithi, Murang'a, Nyeri, Siaya, and Busia counties. Fifth, the government has reformed the National Health Insurance Fund to meet the urgent needs of Kenyans at the bottom of the socio-economic structure by actualizing its purpose as a social medical insurance facility. In addition, the government has committed to deliver universal health coverage to ensure that every Kenyan attains dignified health care at a minimum subscription fee. And finally, the government has reviewed the policy on the energy sector with the aim of developing and diversifying this market further by improving the sourcing and supply of cooking gas that inevitably has resulted in high cost that drive domestic inflation. This has allowed for additional players to be licensed and to set up liquefied petroleum gas facilities. A common use of bulk storage and even handling facility for LPG will be constructed through a private sector participation framework to enhance market certainty and stability in the use of LPG. This will cut costs of handling and evacuating gas from ships to the mainland, and hence allowing dealers to pass through the cost of relief to consumers. Mr. Speaker, in order to improve service delivery and support livelihoods and businesses, as well as strengthen governance institutions, the Kenya Kwanza government has, since assumption of office, established Financial Inclusion Fund. This is commonly known as the Hustlers Fund. That was set up in November 2022 to provide access to affordable credit to individuals and MSMEs, medium and small enterprises, and to encourage savings. This is an intervention that will remain at the bottom of the pyramid in order to access borrowing under the fund. A customer only needs to register through his or her mobile phone. Since the launch of the first product, the Hustler Fund Personal Loan Fund, the government has invested a total of 11 billion shillings. This money has been revolving within the fund, providing low interest rate at 8% per annum, and so far 16.07 million Kenyans, of which 7.1 million are repeat customers, have actually accessed the fund. So far, 30.8 billion has been borrowed from this revolving fund. In addition to borrowing, the fund is designed to encourage savings. To date, 1.5 billion has been saved as a mandatory savings, while Kenya shilling 17 million has been saved on a voluntary basis. We have witnessed a phenomenal growth in the number of transactions that currently stand at 43.5 million transactions. The largest number of the times a single customer borrower has borrowed from the fund is about 50 times, indicating strong traction of the Hustlers Fund. To further empower the medium and small enterprises, the government on 1st June 2023 launched the second product of the Financial Inclusion Fund that is aimed at facilitating Kenyan access funding through groups. This follows the phenomenal success of the personal loans products under this initiative, and this will allow lending groups such as chamas and SACCOs and SACCOs. The groups can now borrow loans from between 20,000 shillings to 1 million shillings. Third, we have redesigned the competence-based education curriculum to make it responsive to our education needs. And fourth, I've employed over 30,000 teachers in a historic and unprecedented drive to improve the national teacher-pupil ratio and enhance performance. Fifth, government has introduced a new funding model for higher education that will make the universities and technical training fully inclusive, financially self-sufficient, and also capable of competing with their peers globally while contributing to our national socio-economic transformation. Sixth, the government has established the National Open University in order to make higher education inexpensive, affordable, accessible, inclusive, and attainable to all. The university will create its charter before the end of this month, that is June 2023. Seven, the government has launched several affordable housing projects across the country, translating to about 36,000 housing units in just 8 months. Eighth, the government has proposed and moved with digitalization, and the digitalized and automated services to the tune of 3,570 of government services through the eCitizen platform. that has enhanced access to government services and brought greater convenience to citizens. The government targets to bring on board close to 5,000 services on the e-citizen platform by the end of 2023. Number 9 is the government has launched a data protection registration system to provide digital identity to all Kenyans in order to facilitate the transactions between the government and its citizens. Finally, returned the port operation from Mombasa and Naivasha to Mombasa, returned the port operations from Nairobi and Naivasha to Mombasa in order to revamp the coastal economy and give importers, especially the business community, a choice on cargo clearance. The government has introduced a G2G, a government-to-government arrangement for oil importation to provide a longer-term supply of fuel and ease the monthly demand of US dollars in a situation where global dollar shortage was ensuing. Government has also appointed 4 Court of Appeal judges and 2 judges of the Environment and Land Courts in line with the recommendations of the Judicial Service Commission to strengthen the judiciary. Further, the government escalated the actualization of the judiciary fund that will increase the allocation of resources towards enhancing the access to justice. And finally, the government has enhanced the independence of the National Police Service by granting them financial autonomy as envisaged in our Constitution. Mr. Speaker, while we celebrate these achievements, we are aware that a lot remains to be done in order to decisively deal with the pressing socioeconomic challenges. First, to reverse the effect of the recent past negative shocks that have been persistent. And second, to improve and accelerate the betterment of the livelihoods of Kenyans. It is for this reason that the government is implementing the bottom-up economic transformation agenda, popularly referred to as BETTER, which is geared towards economic turnaround and inclusive growth. It is aligned to this agenda. It is in alignment to this agenda for this year's budget theme carries that spirit. This year's budget, the theme is bottom-up economic transformation and climate change mitigation and adaptation for improved livelihoods of Kenyans. Consistent with this, the government will scale up implementation of policy priorities and structural reforms under the bottom-up economic transformation agenda, as detailed in the 2023 budget policy statement and the 4th medium-term plan, MTP4, which is currently under development, and that it will guide the attainment of these development objectives, as well as a continuation of the Kenyan Vision 2030 and Sustainable Development Goals. The strategy will involve increasing investments in 5 strategic sectors that have the largest impact and linkages to the economy, as well as on household welfare as the starting point. These 5 sectors include agricultural transformation, micro and small medium enterprise economy, housing and settlement, healthcare and digital superhighway, as well as the creative industry. Special focus will be placed on the interventions that reduce the cost of living, create jobs, achieve more equitable distribution of income, enhance social security, and expand the tax base for more revenues to finance development. And finally, also geared towards increasing foreign exchange to give us flexibility in that market. Mr. Speaker, we intend to implement the policy priorities within a sustainable fiscal framework. Overall, we have moderated our spending to ensure the value for money and enhanced the revenue mobilization efforts to ensure that our public debt remains on a sustainable path. Prioritization is critical because resources are scarce, thus limiting our capacity and desire to cover everything at once. In this regard, the budgeting process for the priority programs under the bottom-up economic transformation agenda will be managed through a value chain approach. This has ensured that the resources allocated along the value chain are allocated to all the components along the value chain, thereby eliminating duplication of roles, removing any funding gaps, and enhancing efficiency in the use of available budgetary resources. Mr. Speaker, it is now my privilege and honor to present the economic and fiscal policy underpinnings the government's bottom-up economic transformation agenda for improved livelihoods to Kenyans. Thereafter, I will broadly outline the proposed resource allocations and revenue-raising measures that the government will implement in the financial year 2023-2024 budget. But before I proceed to elaborate on programs, let me start by highlighting the economic context in which this budget has been prepared. Let me start with economic policy context and focus on the global economy. Mr. Speaker, the financial year 2023-2024 budget has been prepared against a background of increased uncertainties in the global economic outlook, reflecting continued geopolitical tensions, particularly the ongoing conflict in Eastern Europe, and the pace of monetary policy tightening amidst concerns about financial sector stability in the advanced economies. As a result, the global economic growth is projected to slow down to 2.8% in 2023 from 3.4% in 2022. Economic prospects are also expected to slow down across regions and countries. Nevertheless, the commodity prices in the global markets, particularly oil and food, have been easing due to improved and functioning supply chains. Let me turn to domestic economy. Mr. Speaker, on the domestic scene, the economic growth for 2022 slowed down to 4.8% from 7.6% in 2021 due to adverse impact of the multiple shocks that affected the economy. Kenya's growth in 2022 was supported by growth in the services sector, while the agricultural sector contracted for the second consecutive year due to the prolonged drought effects, but that also contributed to a slowdown in the growth of manufacturing sector as well as that of wholesale and retail trade sectors. Mr. Speaker, the economy is expected to rebound and expand by 5.5% in 2023 up from 4.8% in 2022. And it is supposed to maintain that pace of the medium term. The growth will be supported by a broad-based private sector-led growth, including continued strong performance of the services sector and the recovery from the agricultural sector due to improved weather conditions during the March-May rainy season. This growth outlook will be reinforced by interventions being implemented by the government under the bottom-up economic transformation agenda that include the provision of subsidized fertilizer and seeds to farmers during the planting season. Further, economic activity is expected to improve and drive aggregate demand expansion as the international community, international commodity prices is coupled with improved exports and resilient private sector consumption, as well as the ongoing public-private investments. Mr. Speaker, the government will continue to support economic recovery by pursuing prudent macroeconomic policies geared towards reducing debt vulnerabilities and supporting sustainable and inclusive development. Inflation rate has remained above 7.5%, which is the upper bound target since June 2022. This is driven mainly by high food prices and energy prices following the adverse weather conditions and high global oil prices, but also compounded by the pass-through effects from the domestic currency depreciation. In order to anchor inflation expectations, the Central Bank of Kenya, through Monetary Policy Committee, tightened monetary policy during the last 1 year by raising the central bank rate to 9.5% in March 2023 from 7.5% in May 2022. This monetary policy action, together with improved agricultural production occasioned by the wrong rains and supported by fertilizer subsidy program and the ongoing importation of key food items, particularly maize, cooking oil, rice, sugar, at a duty-free window, are expected to ease the domestic prices and basic food items. Already, the inflation pressures are easing with inflation rate at 8% in May 2023 from the highs of 9.6% in October 2022. Inflation rate is expected to return to the target range within the second quarter of financial year 2023-2024. Also, in addition, credit to the private sector has grown by 13.2% in the last 12 months to April 2023, and this is supporting economic activity. Most sectors of the economy continue to receive positive credit flows. Mr. Speaker, to further anchor inflation expectations, the Central Bank of Kenya will continue to implement reforms outlined in the White Paper on modernization of the monetary policy framework and operations that are aimed at enhancing the effectiveness of monetary policy formulation and implementation to prevent monetary policy falling behind the curve. These reforms include refining macroeconomic forecasting frameworks in line with the changing structure of the economy, improving the functioning of the interbank market to strengthen monetary policy transmission, and continued improvements of communication on monetary policy decisions. Mr. Speaker, the fiscal policy stance over the medium term aims at supporting the government's bottom-up economic transformation agenda through growth-friendly fiscal consolidation plan designed to slow down the annual growth in public debt and implement an effective liability management strategy without compromising service delivery to citizens. This will improve the country's debt sustainability position. Mr. Speaker, I now turn to the policy priorities of the government for fostering economic transformation and improved livelihoods. The policy priorities and structural reforms for improved livelihoods start with the bottom-up economic transformation agenda. Mr. Speaker, this year's budget places special emphasis on priorities at the bottom-up economic transformation agenda, which is detailed in 2023 budget policy statement that was approved by this House in March 2023. This agenda is premised to address the challenges of the economy is facing, to stimulate economic recovery, bolster resilience while building on the success realized over time. The strategy will involve increasing investment in at least 5 sectors envisaged to have the largest impact and linkages to the economy, as well as on household welfare. The priority programs are classified under 2 categories, namely the core pillars and the enablers that aim at the creation of a conducive business environment for socio-economic transformation. Mr. Speaker, as indicated earlier, in this statement, the core pillars include agricultural transformation, micro, small, and medium enterprises of the economy, housing and settlement, healthcare, and digital superhighway, and in creative industry. In order to make this program feasible, the government will implement strategic interventions under the following key enablers. First, the infrastructure, manufacturing, the blue economy, the services sector, the environment and climate change, education and training, women agenda, youth empowerment and development agenda, social protection, sports, culture and arts, as well as the governance. Mr. Speaker, in order to realize the aspirations of the bottom-up economic transformation agenda, the government will first continue to maintain macroeconomic stability and enhance the security to foster and secure conducive business environment for all Kenyans and their investment. Second, the government will intensify national infrastructure development and connectivity of roads and port, energy and fiber optic infrastructure to lower the cost of movement of people and goods, lower the cost of doing business, thereby enhancing profitability of businesses. Third, the government will enhance investment in key economic sectors for broad-based sustainable economic recovery by promoting agricultural transformation, growth in manufacturing, environmental conservation and water supply, food security, climate change mitigation and adaptation, tourism recovery, and sustainable land use and management. In this regard, food security and climate change will also become a focal point for policy formulation going forward. Fourth, the government will expand access to quality social services in health, education, and appropriate social safety nets for the vulnerable population. And finally, the government will support the youth, women, persons living with disabilities through government-funded empowerment programs that leverage on partnership with private sector organizations. Mr. Speaker, the government, under the support of the development partners, is implementing a program that aims at boosting revenue mobilization to reduce total expenditures as a percentage of GDP, thereby providing growth-friendly fiscal consolidation plan designed to slow down the annual growth of public debt and implement an efficient liability management strategy, without at the same time compromising service delivery to citizens. The fiscal consolidation plan targets to gradually reduce the fiscal deficit, including grants, from 6.2% of GDP in the financial year 2021-2022 to 5.8% of GDP in the financial year 2022-2023 to 4.4% of GDP in financial year 2023-2024, and further reduce the fiscal gap further to 3.6% in financial year 2025-2026. Mr. Speaker, we are truly grateful as a nation to our development partners who have over the years provided financial resources to support the implementation of government programs, government policy, as well as structural reforms. In particular, allow me to single out the multilateral institutions, specifically the World Bank and the International Monetary Fund, the European Union, the African Development Bank, and the many bilateral donors, institutions, and governments that have walked the journey of socio-economic transformation with Kenya. Mr. Speaker, Kenya has continued to successfully implement the Extended Fund Facility and Extended Credit Facility, EFF and ECF arrangements supported by the IMF, the International Monetary Fund. We concluded the fifth review of the program in May 2023, and we agreed on the augmentation of access under the program of 75% of the quota, that is SDR special drawing rights for 407.1 million, or which is about $544.3 million, an extension of the duration of the ECF arrangement by 10 months to April 2025 to allow sufficient time for meeting the program objectives, and on a new 20-month Resilience and Sustainability Facility, RSF, arrangement that will allow us to access 75% of our quota that will run parallel with the ECF program arrangements until April 2025. Once approved by the IMF Executive Board in July 2023, Kenya will immediately access SDR 306.7 million, which is about $410 million, including from the augmentation of the access under ECF, EFF. This will bring the cumulative IMF financial support disbursed under the EFF, ECF program arrangements to SDR 1.509 billion, or about $2.017 billion, and For us, that's why we are appreciative of this multilateral institution. The government will also access additional SDR 407.1 million, about 443 million under the new 20-month Resilience Sustainability Facility arrangement upon successful next review. Mr. Speaker, when combined with RSF support, the cumulative IMF commitment to Kenya will be about SDR 2.633 billion, which is about $3.52 billion by April 2025. Mr. Speaker, as a stopgap measure to ease the pressure on the domestic supply of petroleum products, as well as ease pressure on the Kenya shilling arising due to the global shortage of US dollars in the domestic market, we have introduced an innovative new government-to-government arrangement for fuel importation through Regal Notice number 3 of 2023. That Regal Notice allows us to import the importation of petroleum products by private sector through the current open tender system, OTS. To date, the monthly importation of petroleum products is approximately 740,000 metric tons, of which 60% is consumed in the domestic market, while 40% is for transit markets in the region. This product is currently paid for using United States dollars, which puts strain on foreign exchange availability and pressure on nominal exchange rate and ensuing exchange rate volatility in the market on a monthly basis. Mr. Speaker, to contain the pressure of the US dollar availability,